Okay, we're back today with Jordan Macleod, who is talking to us about his new book coming called Ego, Money, and Empire. And Jordan, we've been really talking about a lot of the problems and some of the issues that are sort of the backdrop for some of the economic changes. So let's talk now about some of the things that we can do to favorably affect our position in the global economy.
So from from an American point of view, I think what should happen is that they, immediately ratify the reform at the IMF and to acknowledge the increased, probably the increased role that the BRIC countries deserve in the economic system. There's obviously concerns with Russia and the aggression in the Ukraine, and I think that's been a real sticking point for Congress. And I think that's fair in the sense that why would we give a country that's invading another country more influence and power in the IMF? But the fact is that they, from a pragmatic point of view, it makes sense. I think the net positive is certainly there for America, and I think that they have to immediately show leadership and an alignment to maintain their position.
When is the first opportunity that they're going to have to ratify this?
If you're talking about the IMF,
yeah.
the drawing rights. So the informal review process starts now, essentially in May, and the formal review is in November.
So this is what they're taking up then.
And does the U.S. Congress have anything to do with this as far as the ratification process?
Totally. So yeah, I mean, it could happen that exactly what happened with those reforms in 2010 happen again, where the administration is on board with the yuan joining, but Congress refuses. So this reminds me somewhat of Russia during Gorbachev's time. I mean, he's one of the least popular leaders, because he's seen as leading their decline. And, I think the opposite is true.
I do too.
Absolutely.
Amazing leader. But, they see it as like a loss, he's responsible for their loss of power. And I think that could be a situation that we experience it with the United States, in that it's very divisive, and that, there's a strand of American leadership that wants to continue to lead an international system where it's simply a multipolar world. And there's another strand that really thinks that America is the shining beacon on the hill and deserves a special place in that system. And so, there could be a lot of blame on certain leaders, that are pushing for an international system that where America is a multipolar player.
Jordan, something is coming up for me in regard to this whole conversation, and maybe this is a whole ruse, and maybe it's not, but the U.S. government and the president, the Congress, they have nothing to do with monetary policy whatsoever. They're basically slaves to the central bank, to the Federal Reserve. So my question is, why, if that's the case, does the president and the Congress have anything to do with this? I mean, they don't set policy. They have nothing to do with money. The government doesn't print money. We live at the behest of the Federal Reserve. Why aren't the central banks doing this?
So that is a part of it. I mean, the central banks are involved in this process. And that is not necessarily a good thing, because they're extremely opaque, and a lot of them are run by private corporations, essentially.
Sure.
But the issue is that a lot of these decisions are carried out at the governmental level, and the IMF, economic policy, economic trade, free trade regions. These are all these are aspects that are handled by the U.S. government and other governments. Central bank is more limited to economic policy and to maintaining the integrity of the dollar. Basically targeting inflation and employment. So the role of the central bank is extremely limited, per se, the way it's currently structured.
Okay.
And I wonder if it will make a difference this time, because 5 years ago we would have had a primarily Democratic Congress, and now we have a primarily Republican, or at least a Republican majority. So do you think that will make any difference, or are we still headed down the same path?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much divided. It, you know, I think the leading obstruction to IMF reforms is certainly Republican, and I'm coming at this from a point of view where I'm neither. I'm
Right,
not.
right.
You're a Canadian.
I'm Canadian. So that's none of my business. But the Republicans are obstructing it, and certainly Democrats are as well. I think looking back at testimony recently where Jack Lew, the head of Treasury,
Mm-hmm.
he was fielding questions about whether the U.S. should be penalizing China for currency manipulation. So they're pretty much clueless in terms of where things are headed and where things are. I mean, America is really not in a position right now to be doing that, if you know what I mean. Like it's really they're just not asking the right questions. They don't seem to really be getting the issue and what's actually happening before our eyes. And so I think there's some denial, and there's just really a confusion over what to do. And I think there really is no easy answer for America at this stage. And so I guess for me, my point of view is that it's going to be disruptive no matter what, and we really need to be looking at how do we use this as an opportunity to really come to terms with the shadows that are in the financial system, and how do we really take it to the next level where we're not the last thing we want to do is just do the same thing over again at an international United Nations type level where there's just more countries involved and it's chaos and it's very opaque and there's really no accountability.
And nothing gets done.
Nothing gets done.
Right.
So that's essentially why I'm writing the book, is how do we take this to the next level and really increase really increase the role the role that everyday citizens have, Main Street has over the global economy. And I think that, that's a process that America has the potential to lead, and to it's really just embedded in the DNA of American culture.
Mm-hmm. You make a really good point in the write-up for this new book about values and what we value. Mm-hmm. And how is that going to support or undermine really an interconnected global economy? What are your thoughts about that? Where do we need to realign our values?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is really taking responsibility and accountability for these processes, and being willing to look at them and to change them. I think that the way that it's worked is that we've been willing to offload these responsibilities to other people and let them take care of it, and just a lot of it's just been taboo and unconscious for a long time.
Right.
And 20 years ago, there weren't many people thinking about citizens thinking about money and its impact, or that they didn't care about the Federal Reserve being private, basically privately owned, and the opaqueness of that. And now I think it's just with the internet and with digital technology, with the emergence of cryptocurrencies and the ability to create money, basically anybody can do it. There's a realization that all of these structures are really outdated, and there's the ability to really make it work for everyone. And so I think, that's the sort of value. It's really the systemic value. And, I think there's a humility as well that really, that really is willing to let go of any arbitrary power that is being held. Mm-hmm. And so it's, it becomes about how do you create a level playing field, and a system that works for everyone. And at the same time, we're talking about an interconnected system where there's diverse values and levels of complexity within cultures and countries. Mm-hmm. And so, that ability, that capacity to really meet other people where they're at, and to, I think, to help them with where they're at, as opposed to imposing or projecting values onto them, is really, where the leadership, that's the kind of value system where the leadership will emerge from.
There's another good point you make too. Sorry, Roger, we'll get back to you in just a second. That you talk about the millennial generation, those people that were born from 1982 to 2000, I think. And I can't help but think if we replace the entire Congress with people born in that generation, we'd be better off with the people that we
We'd be
have
better
there
off
now.
with 13-year-olds.
We'd probably get more done. But they are our future, and in a way they hold the key to all of this. So what role do you see them playing in the near future? And then obviously they're going to play a bigger role as they age and get into their 40s, 30s, late 30s and 40s. So what role are they playing right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's an extremely dynamic generation, and they're extremely capable. And we're seeing that in at the corporate level. We're seeing that in this in the world of startups and new digital technologies and social media. I mean, it's just profound, the work that's being done by this generation. And so the solutions, in my we're still talking about kids, like kids in their 20s or teens or younger. And so it's not like they have all of the answers, but I think there's just an amazing energy and just an intuitive knowledge of and an interest in creating a financial system and disrupting the financial system. So that's something where I think as it begins to change and loosen up in the next couple of years, we're going to see a tremendous surge of energy coming from them to start building the new stuff and to really showing how it can work. But it's what we're talking about is certainly going to require every generation and every value system. Frankly, I think that there's really no generation or value that really has it all figured out. And I think you can see different value systems active in different generations, and they tend to be I think at this stage they're more complementary than anything, where we really need to figure out how to align all these perspectives. And that that's also true in the division between the left and the right. I think that that we can kind of expect that fragmentation and that division to widen as things get more chaotic. And at the same time, there's an increasing opportunity to hold the middle and to show that we're actually going to build a system that can transcend both points of view. And so that's really where solutions are going to come from, is leadership that has that ability to see both points of view and to really show how we can create a world that works for both sides. I mean, when you look at the Tea Party and you look at Elizabeth Warren, they're really, they have a lot more in common than we might think. And I think that, there's a potential that for the next U.S. election, I would think that there's a potential to move further to either side of the spectrum, more extreme, and at
Certainly
the same
supported in the stars.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Well, I was excited last night when I got an email saying that Bernie Sanders announced that he is running for president of the United States, and it's like, sign me up. What I'd like to go back to something that you wrote in your article that I think is really at the foundation of what it is that of your work, and a lot of how what I've been doing and how I see the world through that spiral dynamics lens. And for those who don't know what that is, we have some videos from a previous show where we discuss spiral dynamics, but I want to just read this and then and have a little bit of a discussion about it. And you say in your article that rather than regress to the blue authoritarian power structures, China, red barbarianism, the Islamic State, and other terror groups, or blue-orange top-down internationalism, the IMF and central banks, that fails to qualitatively change the current systemic dynamics, a next-order system is required that transcends the current socio-economic paradigm, which is currently on life support. And you go on to say that global society couldn't have possibly emerged to this point without America's leadership, courage, and wisdom, and it's led us to a global renaissance. I think that one of the things for me in reading that is recognizing the fact that we have we've gone as far as we can with the system that we have.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
And that out of that, we were in the early stages of creating something new, but we don't know what that is yet. Bitcoin, for example, and you had mentioned a minute ago about other currencies, and I'd like to kind of hone in on that for a little bit. Can you say? Can you talk more about Bitcoin and what's its valid? Is it a valid option? Should people be investing in that? Should we be creating more local currencies? What are your thoughts on that? Because this is all part of creating that whole transcend and include thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, first, I'll answer that, and then maybe talk a little bit about, America going as far as it could, and I at least as it is now. And I think that when I was in London talking at Bloomberg, one of the things that I spoke to hedge fund managers and other business types.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Say that again.
So basically, there's a skepticism towards Bitcoin, let's say, in investment circles and some investment circles. And it has more to do with how it's designed than it does about how it's performed or anything like that. I mean, there's an extraordinary, in the Valley, you'll see a ton of support for Bitcoin and for its potential. And, others take a more skeptical view. And, what I essentially said there was, there really needs to be, for cryptocurrencies to go to the next level beyond sort of, hype driven or sort of dabbling, you know what I mean? Like just kind of, this is kind of cool or interesting. You really need price stability. And, there's been such volatility that I think, and a lot of people have been burned in terms of, buying at a high and then it going down a lot, or, losing their money in one of the exchanges that was basically ripped off or hacked or whatever. So, there's major issues to overcome still. And, price stability is, in my view, the biggest one. If you can create a price stable currency over time, then that really obviates the need for competitive, currencies or a multitude of currencies. And, the way that Bitcoin's designed now is the way that almost every other cryptocurrency is designed. You just take an arbitrary number of units and you allocate them over an arbitrary number of years to an arbitrary number of people for arbitrary reasons. And, so you know what I mean? Like it doesn't, basically, like if you issue 100 million units, it has it's indifferent to how much demand there is. And so there's no price stability. I mean, if you can create a currency that's responsive to demand, then, and, the supply can actually increase and decrease, then that's something that really is powerful. And, it starts to transcend what central banks can do now. And, that's where things can start to converge. It's really where, you're actually solving problems that the central banks have. And you're not just saying, F you central banks, we're going to go do our own thing and, and build this Bitcoin. It's really about, getting real about the actual problems that central banks face. And, a lot of it is, negative rates, like we talked about last time. Mm-hmm. And the ability to manage the money supply in real time. When a fully digitized economy, you know what the demand is instantly. And that's something that's extremely powerful.
Can you, because I don't know if any of our listeners will know this term because it's new to me, what is a cryptocurrency?
So that's essentially what Bitcoin is. And it's essentially, a crypto, it employs cryptographic, like encryption and cryptographic techniques to ensure that it's secure. And, it's a pretty complex and well-designed system for, basically coming out of nowhere. It was extremely polished when it was launched, and it works quite well. It's much slower than what we see in the modern financial world, but it's very effective. And so it really just means secure.
Yeah. What I heard you saying is that there's probably some structural or some problems form-wise with it, but other than that, is it a sound system? Is it a good idea that just needs some work and some technique to it?
Yeah, I mean,
can I interrupt you there for a second? We need to take a short break, and then when we come back, can you answer that and we'll continue?
Sure.